What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, here with a new series that I'm very excited about, that being the division breakdown. So we're going to get right into it with the first episode, the NFC West division breakdown. Looking at how the division ended up last season, the Rams won the division, being the only team to make the playoffs at 10-7, ended up losing in the divisional round to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Seahawks also went 10-7, however, being the 8th seed, just barely missed out on the playoffs. And then the Cardinals at 8-9 missed the playoffs, as well as the 49ers at 6-11. Looking at individual team analyses, starting with the Rams, I think the Rams are, I don't want to say underrated because people obviously know that they are a very good team, but I feel like they don't get talked about as much as one of the top contending teams, which I feel like they are. I feel like the roster talent is very strong. They had a very good season last year. Obviously, the 10-7 record is not an insane number, but they were the team closest to beating the Eagles in the playoffs, who obviously would go on to win the Super Bowl. And I think the Rams only really got better in the offseason. They didn't make a ton of moves. Bringing in Devontae Adams was really the big thing, replacing Cooper Kupp, which I do believe to be an upgrade. Yeah, and I think if you have more development on the defensive side of the ball, on what was already a very promising front seven unit specifically, I think the Rams are going to be a problem in the NFC, honestly. Looking specifically at position groups, I think Matthew Stafford is one of the top quarterbacks in the league. I think he's definitely the best quarterback in that division. I have him ranked 6th overall in the league, and I think he's a real strong suit. The offense in general, Kyron Williams gives you a very strong running game. You also have Blake Corum there, and they also drafted Jarquez Hunter. I don't know how much playing time he is going to see, but that is also just added depth to that running back room. And then the receiver core, I think, is the strength of this team. Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, I think, is one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. And having a very good quarterback in Matthew Stafford throwing to that receiving duo, I think, is going to cause problems for the league. Overall, very excited about this offense. The tight end group is not anything too special. You have Tyler Higbee. You drafted Terrence Ferguson, so maybe you could see if he can develop into a weapon there. Also have Colby Parkinson, who was okay in his starting role last year in Higbee's absence, but nothing too special there. But I don't think it needs to be. I think, a reliable tight end who can catch passes when you need is fine because you have already a very strong wide receiver room and a good running game to lean on. Looking at the offensive line, I would say it's about average. I wouldn't say it's a major concern for the team. It's not, a crazy strong suit, but I wouldn't have any real issues with the offensive line. Defensively, the front seven I have ranked as 13th, which honestly, after the way it performed in the playoffs specifically last year, that pass rush was phenomenal. That 13th ranking might seem a little low, but honestly, it's just there's a lot of teams with good pass rushes. I do think the Rams front seven is very strong. Specifically, that pass rush, Jared Verse, obviously, defensive rookie of the year, phenomenal season. I think he's only going to continue to develop and be more of a threat off the edge. As for the secondary, I don't think it's as strong as the front seven, but again, I don't think it's a major liability. It's about average. So overall, I think the defense is going to be pretty good. I think that the pass rush is going to help out that secondary, so I think it could be a very good unit as a whole. And then offensively, I think you have one of the most explosive offenses in the league, and having that with a solid defense is a great place to be. So just top to bottom, I think the Rams have a really complete team, and I expect them to do very well this upcoming season. Moving on to the Seahawks, they had a interesting offseason. You move on from Geno Smith and bring in Sam Darnold, which I do believe is a slight downgrade. Sam Darnold obviously had a very good regular season last year, but you have to remember he was also working with a lot of great weapons in Minnesota, in Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones, TJ Hawkinson, and Seattle just doesn't have that kind of firepower. You do have Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I do like. You bring in Cooper Kupp and lose DK Metcalf. I do think that is a pretty significant downgrade. Unfortunately, I don't think Cooper Kupp is who he once was at this point in his career. But I do like Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I think he kind of had a breakout season last year. And I do anticipate on him continuing to develop into a very good wide receiver one for this team. As for the running back room, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet is a very good duo, and if they can both stay healthy, I think that's going to be a real strong suit for this team. But their entire offensive production, I think, is going to be severely capped by their offensive line. It was a pretty big weakness last year, and they did try and address it. Drafting Gray Zabel, I think, was a very good move for them, but I still have a lot of concerns about it, and especially seeing with Sam Darnold, you could see how he struggled in the playoffs, specifically when his offensive line wasn't offering him great protection. I think he's getting a worse offensive line here, so I do worry about what that will mean for the offensive production for the Seahawks if they cannot protect the quarterback. So overall, I think that the offense might struggle. If Sam Darnold is the guy he was last year and JSN can continue to develop and Cooper Kupp kind of shows some vintage Cooper Kupp in there, I think it can be, I think there's upside. You do have two very good running backs as well. But I do think the offensive line severely caps that offensive ceiling. Defensively, the real strong point is the secondary. I think it's one of the better ones in the league. Devon Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, Josh Jobe, Julian Love, Kobe Bryant. I think that's a very good group. You draft Nick Emenwari. I love that pick as well. And then the front seven defensive line, Leonard Williams, very good. You hope to see more from Byron Murphy. Drafted him very highly and didn't really produce, I think, in the way a lot of Seahawks fans wanted, but there's still room for him to grow and develop. So I think the defense can still be, a solid enough unit. I don't think it's going to be a real weakness, but overall, I do think that the offensive ceiling is going to be capped, and I don't know how competitive the Seahawks are going to be. I do think they probably have gotten a little bit worse from last year. Moving on to the Arizona Cardinals. Another team I don't know if I feel too strongly about. Kyler Murray I want him to be able to kind of produce as one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Obviously drafted number 1 overall. Received a pretty good contract as well. But he just hasn't been a real franchise quarterback for the Cardinals, unfortunately. And, every year that passes, it's like, okay, is there going to be a real breakout season that shows that he is the guy? And I'm not saying he's bad at all, but I think that they kind of need more from him, and they're not really getting it. As for the running game, James Conner is a good running back, but he is getting older. And Trey Benson is there too, but we haven't really seen him be implemented in a way that can really give any confidence in his abilities, just because we haven't seen a whole lot of him. Not that he can't have a big breakout season. And obviously, I think James Conner is still a solid starting back, but I don't know if it's a real, strength or asset. It's just more of a reliable, solid run game. As for the receiver core, Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, definitely disappointed last year, but had very high expectations. I don't think he was bad by any means. I do have their receiver core ranked at 27th in the league, which is very low. I do expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to kind of take a big step up this year, or I really think he has to, and I do think it will happen. But overall, I think that receiver room just really lacks depth behind him. You do have Michael Wilson, who has been solid for them at times, but then you get to Greg Dortch and Zay Jones, and it's really just there's not a ton of depth there at all, and that is a major concern. However, a real strength of this team is at tight end. Trey McBride is one of the best tight ends in the league. Real, just reliable pass catcher for Kyler Murray. Saw that last year. And I think if he can continue to be that can, he can really drive this offense and just help out a lot where, the receiving core isn't as deep, but you have a reliable tight end to get to. If Marvin Harrison Jr. can step up I think Kyler can make it work with those two specifically, and you have a solid run game to lean on as well. I do think there is a world where like this offense can kind of work out, but I think there is concerns there with the overall lack of depth and just kind of explosive upside in your running game and in your passing game as well. The offensive line, I don't think is a real strong suit. I don't think it's terrible. Drafted Paris Johnson Jr. recently, been good enough, but the rest of the O-line is kind of like a whatever for me. I wouldn't say it's terrible. I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. I just don't think it's, a huge strength in a way that a lot of other teams have a big strength in their offensive line. Defensively, this is an area where the Cardinals really struggled last season. Their defense was really bad, so they did a lot in the offseason to address it, and I think they did very well, specifically the front seven. They were able to build that up amazingly. You have Calais Campbell there, draft Walter Nolan, you have Dalvin Tomlinson on that interior too, that's very strong. Bring in Josh Sweat, who's a huge acquisition from the Eagles. I think he's going to be very good. And then in the secondary, drafting Will Johnson in the second round, I thought they got very good value on. Obviously, there's some injury concerns there, which is why he fell, but I do think he will be good for them as well. Buda Baker, getting older, but still one of the better safeties in the league back there. I do think the defense is going to be much improved this season, and I think that it could be a strong suit for the team, and I definitely don't think it will be the liability that it was before. Unfortunately, overall, I don't know what kind of ceiling the Cardinals can have. Just kind of underwhelming roster talent across the board, aside from obviously that front seven group and tight end, but offensively, if your tight end is your big thing, that can't really get you too far, unfortunately. Looking at the 49ers, this is a team that really disappointed last season, but that's really just because they had a bunch of injuries. So you expect them, if they are healthier this season, which you have to expect that they will be because it was really bad last year, that they will be much improved and more of what we kind of are used to the 49ers being one of the powerhouse teams in the NFC. I don't think they had the best offseason, though. They did lose a lot of pieces on both sides of the ball. Looking at the specific position groups, I have never been a huge Brock Purdy guy. I do think he's a solid quarterback. I never thought he was, one of the top guys. Just got paid a big contract, so happy for him on that. I do think he is a solid starter, and I think he can win you games, and obviously he's been to a Super Bowl, so he can get this team where they need to go. I do think he does need a pretty good supporting cast around him to do so, and that is where I have some concerns. Christian McCaffrey coming off another major injury. Obviously, when he's healthy, he is arguably still the best running back in the league, but getting older and obviously coming off another injury, which he has had a history of, that's why I have him ranked 5th. But if he does stay healthy, he is still going to be a major, major weapon for this team. Unfortunately, that is just always a question mark with Christian McCaffrey. The receiving core, I'm very interested to see how that shakes up because Brandon Ayuk seemed like he was going to be the guy, received a massive contract, and then kind of disappeared last year. When he was on the field, it wasn't, I think, what 49ers fans were expecting or hoping for him to do. He never really stepped into that wide receiver 1 role. Deebo Samuel's obviously gone. Juwan Jennings stepped up in a big way last year, but who knows if that's going to be sustained. And then I think you're really just hoping to see some production from Ricky Pearsall. One of these guys has to step up and kind of be that alpha wide receiver 1. And if one of them does, then great. You're going to have a pretty good receiver trio with those 3. Ayuk, Pearsall, and Jennings. I just don't know who that's going to be or if that's going to happen. And if it does not, then I would have some concerns with that group. At tight end, George Kittle, phenomenal tight end again. One of the best tight ends in the league and has been for a while. So I think he's a great weapon for Brock Purdy. Even if that receiving room doesn't produce a real top guy, George Kittle will always be there. And I think that's going to be really good for them. Looking at the offensive line, again, it's another one where it's just kind of, I think, more of an average unit. Trent Williams is obviously one of the best offensive linemen of all time. Very, very good. But aside from him, it's kind of, I don't want to say underwhelming, but it's not, the best. But obviously he is, franchise left tackle and will be protecting Brock Purdy's blind side tremendously throughout the year. Defensively, I do have some concerns, but not a ton. You still have Nick Bosa. You drafted Mykel Williams. Fred Warner is obviously still there. That front seven has some strong suits. I do think defensive interior could be an issue. And aside from Fred Warner, your linebacker room is lacking. Losing Dre Greenlaw in free agency, and obviously don't have Devondre Campbell anymore after what happened last season. So I do think you are missing a lot of depth in that front seven, but I do think you have the top end talent, specifically with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, where it can still be a good unit overall. The secondary, on the other hand, I do think is going to be the major concern with this team. Just lost a lot of pieces from, a few years back when this is, the 49ers were known for having this amazing defense, and it's just kind of not the same as it once was. I do think that having a good pass rush does, obviously, it helps out that secondary, so I think that the strong suit in the front seven can help alleviate the concerns that I would have with the secondary, so I do think this defense can still be solid. I don't think it will be, that amazing defense that we've been kind of used to the 49ers having, like a top 5 defense in the league. But I don't think it should be a major, major concern either. Looking at my projections for each team coming into this upcoming season, I will say the estimated win total, this is the number of wins I think they will get. This is not a projected record. Obviously, these numbers don't add up to 17, but I just need to say that because people will see this and be like, oh, what do you mean the Rams are going to go 9-12? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I think they can win between 9 and 12 games. But anyway, with the Rams, I do think that they are a very good team. I think they will be a playoff team. I think they will win the division. I think they will have a winning record. I have that range anywhere between 9 and 12 wins. I would probably lean toward 12. I'm personally very high on the Rams this season. Yeah, I just think they're going to be very good. Playoff chance, it's kind of, there's not a whole lot that goes into that percentage. It's just kind of like a gauge of how good I think they are. So 75% chance. I wouldn't put too much stock into the exact number, though. Looking at the Seahawks and Cardinals, I both have anywhere between 6 and 10 wins. I think for both teams, there is a world where, if things go right and players gel together, certain players develop well, I think they could get to double-digit wins and have a chance to fight for a playoff spot. But on the other side of that spectrum, I do think there is a world where things just kind of collapse in the Seahawks case. That O-line, I do have major concerns about, and the Cardinals just overall, talent on the roster. I think there's a world where, both teams could majorly disappoint. They could hit like that 6-win floor. So yeah, I think there's definitely a tale of two different scenarios with each team. And yeah, that's where I got those numbers from. As for the 49ers, I do think that they have a higher floor and ceiling from the Seahawks and Cardinals just because the roster talent is much better, and I do expect them to be a lot healthier than they were last year. I think that it's a safe bet to put them second in the division as a projection. Seahawks and Cardinals, I have the Seahawks at third, Cardinals at fourth, but I could see that really flip-flopping either way, just depending on how things shake out. 49ers, I am confident that they are kind of the clear number 2 in this division with the upside to maybe even win the division if things, go well and we see kind of like the 49ers from a couple years ago that were, kind of running the NFC. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't I don't know how confident to be in the 49ers right now. I kind of have to see them produce to do it. Whether or not McCaffrey stays healthy for the majority of the season, I think is going to be a big deciding factor, as well as just seeing how that wide receiver room shakes out. Is someone going to step up? Because if both of those happen, then I think that offense is going to be just fine. But otherwise, then I would have some concerns. But yeah, that is kind of all I have to say about the NFC West. I appreciate you for watching if you're still here. This is, I think, the longest video I've ever recorded, so let me know if you enjoy the long form content. Obviously, this series will definitely be more long form videos. But yeah, thanks for watching, and if you have any thoughts on anything, any questions, anything you would do different, anything you want to ask about, disagreements, I'd love to hear it. I will do my best to respond to every comment, answer every question, explain my reasoning. And yeah, just any feedback would be greatly appreciated. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. There should be more coming. I'm going to try and do one division per week for the rest of summer until, I've gone through all 8 divisions. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.